The horse starts stomping the ground, and the farmer is surprised by what he finds when he digs. Walter Thompson woke to the desperate whinnies of thunder echoing across the morning pasture. At 52, he knew every sound that horse made, but he had never heard anything like it in 20 years together. The brown horse with the black mane was frantically stomping a specific spot in the field, as if something was deeply bothering him right there. Walter ran over, his heart racing from the strangeness of the situation. "Easy, Thunder. What's gotten into you?" he murmured, trying to approach the agitated animal. But the horse wouldn't calm down. He kept beating his hooves on the dry ground, kicking up dust and whinnying in a way that sounded almost human, as if he was trying to say something. Walter observed the spot more carefully. It was just ordinary dirt, like any other part of the pasture. There was nothing there to justify such a commotion, or so he thought. "Walter, what's going on?" shouted Meredith from the porch of the house, her voice full of worry. His wife of 25 years was walking toward the pasture, her hands still wet from washing the breakfast dishes. Her graying hair was tied in a simple bun, and she wore the flowered apron he liked so much. "I don't know, dear. Thunder's gone crazy. He's stomping here like there's something buried." Meredith came closer, watching the animal's strange behavior. She had known that horse since they got married and had never seen him like this. "Do you really think there could be something?" she asked, frowning. Walter didn't answer right away. He was considering the possibility, as absurd as it seemed. Thunder was a smart animal. He had saved the cattle a few times by sniffing out problems before the humans even noticed. "There's only one way to find out," he said finally, walking to the shed to get a shovel. Meredith watched her husband go, a strange feeling coming over her. Something about that morning felt different, as if the air was charged with expectation. When Walter returned with the tool, Thunder had moved back a few meters, but was still staring intently at the spot. It was as if he knew his mission was accomplished, that he had drawn attention to the right place. "I'm going to dig here," Walter announced, driving the shovel into the earth. The first few shovelfuls revealed nothing but the common soil of the region. But when he reached about half a meter deep, the sound changed. The shovel hit something solid, something different. "There's something here," he said, his breathing quickening. Meredith approached, her heart pounding. 25 years living on that property, and she had never imagined there could be something buried in the pasture. Walter dug around the object more carefully, trying not to damage whatever it was. Gradually, the outline of a small wooden box appeared, well preserved despite its time underground. "My goodness," whispered Meredith, bringing a hand to her chest. Very carefully, Walter lifted the box from the earth. It was heavy, heavier than it looked. The wood was a dark color, almost black, and seemed to have been well cared for before being buried. "What do you think is inside?" asked Meredith, her voice low as if they were in a church. Walter brushed the dirt from the surface of the box with trembling hands. There was a small rusty hinge, but it still worked. "Let's find out," he said, opening it slowly. What they found inside left them both speechless for a few seconds. Documents, yellowed with age, carefully folded. And on top of it all, a faded photograph that made Walter's heart almost stop. In the picture, a young woman was holding a small child in her lap. Behind them, you could see part of a barn that Walter recognized immediately. It was the same one he had demolished 5 years earlier to build a new one. "Walter," Meredith whispered, picking up the photo carefully. "This woman, she looks like me," he completed, his voice coming out hoarse. "She looks like me." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. The two of them stared at the photograph in silence, as if it were an apparition. The resemblance was undeniable. The woman had the same light eyes as Walter, the same nose shape, even the same dimple in the chin. "What are these documents?" asked Meredith, picking up the papers carefully. Walter unfolded the first document and felt his legs go weak. It was a deed to the farm, but dated 1975, 30 years before he had bought the property, and the owner's name was not the one he knew. "This can't be right," he murmured, reading and rereading the document. The deed showed that the farm belonged to a family called Thompson Wilson, the same surname as Walter, but he was absolutely certain he had bought the land from a man named Harold Bennett, who claimed to have been the owner for decades. "Meredith, are you seeing this?" He showed the paper to his wife. She read the document twice, her expression growing more and more confused. "Thompson Wilson. But that's your surname, Walter." "Yeah, but I've never heard of this family. My mother always said we had no relatives in this region." Meredith looked at her husband and then at the photograph again. An old memory began to form in her mind, something she had pushed to the back of her consciousness a long time ago. "Walter," she began hesitantly, "I need to tell you something." He looked at her, realizing from her expression that it wasn't good news. "My mother, before she passed, she told me she knew a woman who worked on this farm many years ago, a woman who left pregnant." Walter's world seemed to spin. He sat down on the ground, still holding the documents. "What do you mean, Meredith? Why did you never tell me this?" "Because she made me promise I would never speak of it. She said it was a very sad story, and it was better to let the past lie." Walter felt an anger begin to grow in his chest, but he wasn't sure at whom. At his wife for hiding information? At his mother-in-law for making her promise? Or at himself for having lived 52 years without knowing who he really was? "What else do you know?" he asked, trying to stay calm. "That's all, Walter. I swear. Mom died without telling me the details. But now, looking at this photo," Meredith held the image up to the sunlight. The woman really did look a lot like her husband, but there was also something familiar in her expression. I think I've seen this woman before," she said slowly. "Where?" "I'm not sure. It's like a childhood memory, you know, something very vague." Walter picked up another document from the box. It was a birth certificate, but the paper was so yellowed it was hard to read. He managed to make out only a few names: Elizabeth Thompson Wilson and his own name, Walter Thompson. "It can't be," he whispered. "What is it?" "My name is here on this paper, as the son of Elizabeth Thompson Wilson." Meredith sat down next to her husband on the dry ground. The morning that had started out normal was turning into the most confusing one of their lives. "But your mother's name was Patricia, not Elizabeth." "Exactly. Patricia Thompson, a widow, who raised me alone in the city. At least that's what I knew." The two fell silent, processing the information. Thunder had approached again and was watching them, as if he understood the importance of that moment. "Walter, what if—" Meredith hesitated before continuing. "What if Patricia wasn't your real mother?" The possibility hit Walter like a punch in the stomach. Patricia had been the only mother he had ever known, a caring but reserved woman who rarely spoke about the past and who had raised him with great love on the outskirts of a small town. But why would she do that? To protect you, perhaps? Walter looked at the photograph again. If that woman, Elizabeth Thompson Wilson, was really his mother, then everything he knew about his origin was a lie. And more importantly, if she had lived on this very farm that he now owned, maybe it wasn't a coincidence that he ended up buying this specific property. "Meredith, do you remember when we decided to buy this farm? Was it you who suggested it, or was it me?" She thought for a moment, trying to recall the details from 25 years ago. It was strange, actually. I remember that your mother Patricia talked about this region being good for raising cattle. She said she knew the area. But she had never been here before, had she? Not that I knew of, but now perhaps she had. Walter started putting the pieces together in his mind. Patricia, the woman he called Mother, had suggested they look for properties in this specific region. She had even recommended the real estate agent who led them to Harold Bennett, the man who sold the farm. "Meredith, where is that box of Mom Patricia's things?" "In the attic. Why?" "I need to see if there's anything in there that makes sense with all this." They carefully put the documents and the photograph back in the wooden box and walked to the house. Walter felt as if he were walking toward a truth he might not want to know, but that he needed to discover. In the attic of the house, among spiderwebs and the smell of mold, was the cardboard box with Patricia's belongings. Simple things. Some clothes, worthless costume jewelry, and a small pouch with documents. Walter opened the pouch with trembling hands. Inside he found Patricia's documents as he had expected, but also something he didn't expect. A yellowed letter, never sent, addressed to "My dear Elizabeth." "Meredith, look at this." He read the letter aloud. "My dear Elizabeth, I know you cannot receive this letter where you are now, but I need to write. The boy is growing up well. He looks a lot like you. He has your eyes and your little stubborn streak. Every day I wonder if I did the right thing by promising I would take care of him as if he were my own son. I know you suffered greatly in those last days on the farm, with everything that happened. I hope that one day he can understand why we decided it was better for him to grow up away from there, away from the bad memories. I love you, sister. Patricia." The silence that followed was deafening. Walter reread the letter 3 times before he could fully process what was written there. "Patricia was my real mother's sister," he finally said, his voice almost disappearing. "And your real mother was Elizabeth Thompson Wilson, the woman in the photograph, who lived on this same farm where I have lived for 25 years. Meredith moved closer to her husband and held his hand. She could feel how he was trembling. "Walter, the letter talks about bad memories and everything that happened in the last days. Do you think your mother was forced to leave? It seems so. And she left me with her sister to protect me from something." "But protect you from what?" That was the question Walter couldn't answer. What kind of bad thing could have happened for a mother to leave her baby with her sister and never come back? They continued searching in Patricia's box and found a few more letters, these ones addressed to her. The sender was always the same person, Harold Bennett, the same man who had sold the farm to Walter years later. "Meredith, Harold Bennett knew my Aunt Patricia. Look at these letters." She picked up one of the letters and read the beginning. "Dear Patricia, I hope you and the boy are well. I wanted you to know that things here at the farm have changed a lot since Elizabeth passed away. I'm very sorry for everything that happened. Walter, that man who sold the farm to you knew the whole story, and he never told me anything. He sold my own family's property to me without saying who I really was." The anger Walter felt was growing, but along with it came a deep sadness. His whole life had been built on well-intentioned lies, but lies nonetheless. "Where is Harold Bennett now?" asked Meredith. "He died 2 years ago. Do you remember? We went to the funeral." So how are we going to find out the rest of the story? Walter thought for a moment. He had known some people in the area for a long time. Maybe someone would remember something about Elizabeth Thompson Wilson. Miss Dorothy. She has lived here for 50 years, knows everyone. If anyone knows anything, it's her. Dorothy Wells was 78 years old and had an impressive memory. She lived in a simple little house by the side of the road, half a kilometer from Walter's farm. She was known in the area for knowing the history of all the local families. When Walter and Meredith arrived at her house that afternoon, Dorothy greeted them with her usual warm smile. "Oh, Walter, Meredith, what a nice visit. Come in, come in. I'll make some coffee." "Actually, Miss Dorothy, we came here to ask you something," said Walter, taking the photograph from his pocket. "Do you know this woman?" Dorothy took the photo, put on her glasses, and looked at it carefully. Her face changed completely. The smile disappeared and she became very serious. "Where did you find this?" "Buried in the pasture on our farm, along with some documents." Dorothy sat down heavily in her rocking chair. "Elizabeth Thompson Wilson." She said the name as if she were saying a prayer. "You knew her?" "Yes, I did, and I knew the whole story, but I thought it had been forgotten long ago." Walter leaned forward, eager to finally discover the truth. "Miss Dorothy, please, tell us what you know." The elderly woman took a deep breath before she began. Elizabeth was a hard-working, honest young woman. She worked on the Thompson Wilson farm for a few years. They were a wealthy family, owned a lot of land around here. "Thompson Wilson, that's my last name," said Walter. I know, my child, and it's no coincidence. Dorothy paused as if she were organizing the memories in her head. Elizabeth got involved with the employer's son, a handsome young man, but a bit lost in life. When she got pregnant, the family didn't accept it. They said she was lying, that she wanted to take advantage of the situation. And the young man, didn't he defend her? Oh, my child, he did try. But the family had a lot of power. They managed to convince everyone in the area that Elizabeth had stolen some jewelry from the lady of the house and was inventing the pregnancy to avoid being sued. Meredith held Walter's hand more tightly. But it was a lie. Of course it was. Elizabeth was honest as the day is long, but the family spread the lie everywhere. No one wanted to give her work anymore. No one believed her word. And then? Then she was forced to leave. Pregnant, with no money, no place to stay. Her sister Patricia lived in the city and took her in. Walter felt his chest tighten. His mother had been the victim of a terrible injustice, and he had never known about it. Miss Dorothy and the baby. What happened to the baby? Elizabeth got sick after the birth, very sick. Patricia took care of the boy while she recovered, but Dorothy's voice became choked up. She couldn't recover completely. She was very weak, very shaken by everything she had been through. She decided it was better for the boy to stay with Patricia, in the city, away from all that history. She left. She left, and she never came back. Patricia raised the boy as if he were her own son, but she always kept Elizabeth's things, hoping that one day she could tell the truth. Walter stood up and walked to the window. Outside he could see his farm on the horizon, the farm that he now discovered had belonged to his family. Miss Dorothy and the young man, my father's father? Ah, that's the saddest part of the story. When he found out what the family had done to Elizabeth, he was desperate. He searched for her in every town in the region, but he never managed to find her. He really looked for her. He did, yes, and when he found out she had had a son, he became even more desperate to find the two of you. But Patricia and Elizabeth had decided it was better this way, that it was better for him to grow up far away from that family that had done so much harm. Dorothy took a handkerchief and dried her eyes. Your biological father never married. He spent his whole life looking for Elizabeth and the son he knew he had somewhere. He died about 10 years ago, sad and alone. The revelation was like a punch to Walter's stomach. Not only had he lost the chance to know his real mother, but he had also lost the chance to know his father, a man who had spent his entire life looking for him. What was his name? Michael Thompson Wilson. And the farm? How did it pass to Harold Bennett? Ah, that was after Michael died. He had no known heirs. Well, he had you, but no one knew where you were. The family sold everything to Harold Bennett, who was the foreman there. Harold knew this whole story? He knew, and he also knew that Patricia was raising Elizabeth's son somewhere. But Patricia made him promise never to tell, even when he sold the farm to me? Especially when he sold the farm to you. He recognized your last name right away, saw your resemblance to Michael. But Patricia was still alive at that time and had made him swear he would never say anything. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Walter went home that afternoon with his head buzzing with information. His entire life had been redefined in a single day. He wasn't just Walter Thompson, the farmer who had bought a rural property. He was the legitimate heir of that land, the son of people who had suffered greatly because of prejudice and injustice. Meredith, and now? What do we do with all this? I don't know, Walter. It's a lot to process all at once. They were in the kitchen, the documents spread out on the table. Thunder could be seen through the window, grazing peacefully as if his mission was accomplished. You know what hurts me the most, said Walter. It's thinking that my real mother died without knowing that I was okay, and my father died without ever having known me. But you were raised with love, Walter. Patricia loved you like a true son. I know, and I'm grateful for that. But I also feel like I was robbed of something, of the right to know my true story. Meredith approached her husband and hugged him. The story may have started with sadness, but you've built a good life here. This land is in good hands now. Yeah, but it's not just that. I keep thinking if there are other people who were harmed by this same family, other injustices that were never made right. The next morning, Walter decided to investigate further. He returned to Miss Dorothy's house with more questions. Miss Dorothy, did the Thompson-Wilson family have other employees? Other people who may have been harmed like my mother was? My son, many. They were known for treating their staff poorly. They always made excuses not to pay full wages. They made up stories to dismiss people when they didn't want to pay them anymore. And these people, where are they now? Some died, others moved away from the region, but there are still some around here. Why are you asking this? Because I want to do the right thing. If this land belonged to my family, if my father spent his life looking for me, then maybe I have a responsibility to fix some injustices. Dorothy smiled for the first time since they started talking about the subject. Your father would be proud to hear that. Michael was always a just man even when the family wasn't. Can you help me find these people? Yes, I can. There's Dawn, who lived in a small house at the back of the farm and was thrown out when she became a widow. There's Samuel, who worked there for 15 years and was let go without receiving his last month's pay. There's Anthony's family, who... The list went on for quite some time. Walter wrote down all the names, determined to look for each one of these people. When he returned home, he found Meredith in the kitchen, but she wasn't alone. A woman he didn't know was sitting at the table, a stranger who seemed to be about his age. Walter, this is Valerie. She says she's your cousin. Walter's world stopped again. Cousin. He had never met any relative besides Patricia. Cousin how? Daughter of Michael Thompson-Wilson, your half-sister. Valerie stood up and extended her hand to Walter. She was a woman with a tired appearance, simple clothes, but with the same light eyes that Walter saw in the mirror every day. Pleased to meet you, brother. How did you find out about me? Miss Dorothy came to see me this morning. She said you were asking questions about the Thompson-Wilson family and that you had discovered who you really were. Walter sat down at the table, still processing yet another revelation. Did you know our father? I did. I lived with him until I was 18. Then I got married and moved to another state. I came back here 5 years ago when my husband passed away. And did you know about me? Daddy always talked about the son he had with Elizabeth. He spent his entire life looking for both of you. When he died, he left a letter saying that if you ever showed up, I should tell you the whole truth. Valerie opened her purse and took out a yellowed letter, similar to the ones Walter had found. This is for you, written by our father. With trembling hands, Walter opened the letter. The handwriting was beautiful, careful, from someone who had made an effort to write something important. My son, if you are reading this letter, it means we have finally found each other. Even though I am no longer here to hug you, I want you to know that not a single day went by that I didn't think of you and your mother. The injustice my family did to Elizabeth was the greatest shame of my life. I tried to make it right, but when I found the courage to face everyone, you had already disappeared. I spent the rest of my life searching, but I never managed to find you. I know your mother must have had her reasons to keep you away from me, and I don't blame her for that. But I want you to know that you were wanted, that you were loved, and that you always had a place in my heart. If one day you want to know about me, about your mother, about our story, look for my daughter Valerie. She has all the letters I wrote to Elizabeth, all the photos I kept, all the memories I managed to preserve. With all my love, your father, Michael. Walter had to stop reading twice because the tears blurred his vision. He really looked for me, he whispered. He looked until the last day of his life. And he left all this for you. Valerie placed on the table a box similar to the one Walter had found buried. Inside were dozens of letters, all addressed to Elizabeth Thompson-Wilson, but which were never sent. There were also photographs of Michael at different ages and documents related to the farm. Valerie, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you look for me before? Miss Dorothy knew where I was. Valerie sighed. Because Dad made me promise I would only look for you if you discovered the truth on your own. He said that if Elizabeth and Patricia had hidden you, there must have been a very strong reason, and that it wasn't up to us to force a reunion if you were happy not knowing anything. But now I have found out. Exactly, and that's why I'm here. Meredith, who had been quiet during the whole conversation, finally spoke. Valerie, do you have any idea why the horse started pawing the ground right in that specific spot? Oh, that I can explain. Thunder was Elizabeth's favorite horse. When she left, she couldn't take him with her. Dad took care of him for many years, until the animal got very old. When he was about to pass, Thunder spent days walking around the farm, as if he was looking for something. Looking for what? Elizabeth had a habit of burying small important objects in specific spots on the property. It was a habit of hers, a way of marking important moments. Thunder knew where she had buried the box with the things most important to her. But how did he remember after so long? Horses have an incredible memory, and Thunder was always special. Dad used to say he kept the memories of Elizabeth better than any person could. Walter looked out the window, where Thunder continued to graze peacefully. The animal had managed to do what no human had, bring father and son together, even after so many years. Valerie, I want you to know that I'm happy to have met you, but I'm also confused by all of this. I understand, Walter. It's a lot to take in at once. And I'm also worried about one thing. If the farm belonged to our father, and now you're my sister, are you entitled to half of all this? Valerie gave a soft laugh. Walter, I didn't come here looking for an inheritance. Dad made it clear in his will that you were the heir to everything, if you were found. And besides, I wouldn't even know what to do with a farm this size. But it doesn't seem fair to me. What's fair is you being here, on your family's land, taking care of it like Dad always dreamed you would. I just wanted to meet you, tell you our story, and give you the things that Dad saved for you. Meredith was moved by Valerie's generosity. Valerie, are you going to stay in the area? We would really like to get to know you better. I am. In fact, I was wondering if you two would like to help me with something. What is it? Dad always dreamed of creating a small school on the property. He said he wanted to give opportunities to the children in the region who couldn't afford to study in the city. He saved money specifically for that. Walter was immediately interested in the idea. A school here on the farm? Yes. He said it would be a way to honor Elizabeth's memory, who always valued education very much, even though she never had the opportunities. Meredith, what do you think? I think it's a beautiful idea, and it would be a good way to use part of the land for something that really makes a difference in people's lives. Valerie smiled, visibly relieved. Visibly. So you're in? We're in, but on one condition. What? You will help plan and manage everything. I don't want to do this without you. Walter, I would be honored. The three of them spent the rest of the afternoon talking about the plans for the school, about the family history, and about how good it would be to finally be able to honor the memory of Elizabeth and Michael. When Valerie left, it was already night. Walter and Meredith stayed on the porch, looking at the stars. Do you regret digging that hole? Asked Meredith. No. As painful as it is to discover that my whole life was built on lies, it's better to know the truth. And what about the school? Are you sure? I am. You know, Meredith, all these years I've always felt like something was missing in my life. As if I didn't know what my true purpose was. And now you know? I think so. It's to take care of this land, honor my parents' memory, and do what they couldn't do. Make sure other people have the opportunities they didn't have. Meredith held her husband's hand. Your parents would be proud of you. I hope so. The next morning, Walter woke up with a different feeling. For the first time in his life, he felt he truly knew who he was. Not just Walter Thompson, the farmer, but Walter Thompson Wilson, son of Elizabeth and Michael, heir to a story of love and injustice, responsible for a land that held memories of many generations. He went to the pasture where it all began. Thunder was there, as always, but now Walter looked at him differently. Thank you, old friend, he said, stroking the animal's neck. You fulfilled your mission. He began to mentally plan where would be the best place to build the school. A spot with a good view, but sheltered from the wind. Close enough to the main house to be safe, but far enough for the children to have privacy. Walter, shouted Meredith from the porch, there's someone here to see you. He walked to the house and found an elderly man, of humble appearance, waiting on the porch. "Good morning. Are you Walter Thompson?" "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" "My name is Samuel Cooper. Miss Dorothy said you were looking for people who worked on the Thompson-Wilson farm." Walter remembered the name. He was one of those Dorothy had mentioned, one of the men wronged by the former owning family. "That's right, Mr. Samuel. Please have a seat. Would you like some coffee?" "I'll have some, thank you." Meredith brought coffee for the three of them and sat down to listen to the conversation. "Mr. Samuel, I recently found out that I am the son of Michael Thompson-Wilson, and I'm trying to better understand my family's history, especially the injustices that were committed." The man's face lit up. "You are Mr. Michael's son?" Good heavens, he was a very good man, very different from the rest of the family. "Miss Dorothy told me you were let go without receiving your last paycheck." "Yes, I was. I worked 15 years on that farm. When Mr. Michael died and the family sold everything, they sent me away overnight. Said they didn't have the money to pay me for the last month, but they had money to sell the farm." "Exactly. But what could a laborer like me do against a rich family?" Walter thought for a moment. "Mr. Samuel, how much would that pay be in today's money?" "Oh, son, I don't even know how to calculate that. It was little money back then, but a little money made a big difference for someone who had nothing." "Would you allow me to pay that debt, with adjustment and interest?" Samuel almost dropped his coffee cup. "What do you mean?" "I inherited this property, and with it, I also inherited the responsibility for the injustices that were committed here. If my father were alive, I'm sure he would do the right thing. But you had nothing to do with what happened to me." "Yes, I do. This land carries the history of many people, and I want it to carry stories of reparation, not just injustice." Samuel began to cry. At 73 years old, he never imagined he would receive the money he considered lost for decades. "Mr. Michael would be very proud of you." "I hope so, and I hope you can help me with something. Whatever you need." "I'm planning to build a school here on the property. I need someone experienced to help with the construction, someone who knows this land well. Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering a partnership. You help with the construction of the school, and I'll make sure you are well paid for the work." "I accept. My God, I accept." The news that Walter was looking for people who had been wronged by the Thompson-Wilson family spread quickly through the region. In the following days, several people showed up at the ranch with similar stories. Each case that Walter heard made him more determined to do the right thing. Dawn, the widow who had been thrown out of her home, received enough money to buy a little house of her own. The family of Anthony, who had lost his job when he got hurt working without any assistance, was properly compensated. "Walter," Meredith said one night, "are you sure we have the money for all this?" "We do. The ranch has always been profitable. We have good savings, and Valerie told me that our father left money specifically to right wrongs. It's as if he knew that one day this would be necessary." "And the school?" "Construction will begin next month. Samuel has already found other workers, all people who were wronged in some way in the past. It will be a project built on justice from the very start." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. 3 months later, construction of the Elizabeth Thompson-Wilson Rural School was underway. Walter had decided to honor his true mother by naming the school after her. It would be a small school with 3 classrooms, a library, and a computer room. Valerie had moved to the area permanently and was coordinating the educational project. She discovered she had a calling for teaching, something she had never explored before. "Walter, we already have 15 children enrolled for the first year of operation," she said during one of the planning meetings. "And the teachers?" "We found 2 teachers from the city who agreed to come here, and the librarian will be Miss Dorothy herself." She was thrilled with the idea. "Miss Dorothy? But she's almost 80 years old." "Exactly, and she knows more about local history than anyone alive. The children will learn not only school subjects, but also about their own roots." The idea pleased Walter very much. Miss Dorothy had been essential for him to discover his own story. She would be perfect to help others learn about their origins. On the day of the school's inauguration, half a year after Thunder had started stomping the ground, The entire community was present. Walter had invited everyone who had been harmed by the ranch's previous administration, everyone who had helped with the construction, and all the families of the children who would study there. "Friends," Walter said, speaking to the small crowd gathered in front of the new school. "This school represents more than just a place of learning. It represents proof that the injustices of the past can be transformed into opportunities for the future." He paused, emotional. "My mother, Elizabeth Thompson Wilson, was forced to leave this land pregnant and humiliated. She never got the education she deserved. She could never return to her home. But today, in her honor, this land will offer other children the opportunities she never had." The audience applauded. Many people were crying, including Meredith and Valerie. "And I want to take this opportunity to thank the true hero of this story." Walter pointed to Thunder, who was grazing in the field next to the school. "That horse over there kept secrets for decades. He waited patiently for the right moment to reveal the truth. Without him, I would never have discovered who I really am, and this school would never exist." More applause. Thunder raised his head, as if he understood they were talking about him. "That is why this school will also bear his name. Elizabeth Thompson Wilson Rural School, Thunder, so that no one forgets that sometimes the truth comes from the most unexpected places." The inauguration ceremony was simple but moving. The children sang a song they had prepared especially for the day. Miss Dorothy said a prayer blessing the place, and Samuel, now the school's maintenance supervisor, gave a speech about second chances. At the end of the day, when everyone had left, Walter, Meredith, and Valerie were alone in the new school. "Do you think we did the right thing, Ba?" asked Walter. "I'm absolutely certain," replied Valerie. "Daddy and Elizabeth would be proud to see what you built here." "And Patricia, too," added Meredith. "She raised you to be a good man, and that's what you became." Walter walked over to the plaque at the school entrance, which read, "Elizabeth Thompson Wilson Rural School, Thunder." Below the plaque there was a phrase he had chosen personally. "The truth always finds a way to the light." "You know something?" he said. "I spent 52 years of my life thinking I was an orphan. Today I found out I always had a family scattered across time, but a family nonetheless." "And now you have an even bigger family," said Valerie, pointing to the school. "All these children who will study here, all the families in the community. They are all part of your family now." "Our family," corrected Walter. "Because you're not going anywhere. This land is yours too." "And mine too," said Meredith. "Because I chose to stay by your side even when I found out our whole life had been built on secrets." "Why did you stay?" asked Walter. "Didn't it bother you to find out I hid the truth about my past from you?" "Walter, you hid nothing. You didn't know anything, and even if you had, it wouldn't change how I feel about you. You're the same good person I fell in love with 25 years ago, only now with a more complicated history." "Only now with a more complete history," she corrected him. That night Walter had the best sleep of his life. For the first time he slept knowing exactly who he was, where he came from, and what his purpose was. He wasn't just a farmer who had bought a rural property. He was a man who had returned home, even without knowing he was coming back. 2 years later, the Elizabeth Thompson Wilson Rural School, Thunder, had 45 enrolled students. The children came from all over the region, some walking miles every day to study there. The project had become a model for other rural communities. Valerie had written a book about the experience, telling not only the story of the school, but also the story of Walter and his discovery of his origins. "Valerie, you need to see this," said Walter, showing a letter that had arrived in the mail. "What is it?" "A letter from a university in New York. They want to study our model of a community rural school. They want to turn our experience into a pilot project for other regions of the country." "That's amazing. And there's more. They want you to go there to present the project." Valerie got nervous. "Me? But I'm not a certified teacher. I have no academic experience." "You have something better than that. You have real-life experience. You helped build something from scratch, something that actually works. And will you come with me? Of course, we're a team now." The presentation at the university was a success. Walter and Valerie talked not only about the school's educational aspects, but also about how it had emerged from the need to repair historical injustices. "Do you believe other communities could replicate this experience?" asked one of the university professors. "I believe so," replied Walter, "but not in the same way. Every community has its own history, its own wounds that need healing. The important thing is to understand that education isn't just about teaching school subjects. It's about teaching people to know their own histories. And about giving second chances," added Valerie. "Our project only worked because it included people who had been excluded in the past. Samuel, who had been unfairly let go, became our best builder. Miss Dorothy, who many considered just an old gossip, became our best educator on local history. Do you have plans to expand the project?" "We do," said Walter, "but we don't want to grow too fast. We prefer to grow sustainably, making sure each new school has the same quality and the same commitment to the community." On the flight back home, Valerie asked, "Walter, do you ever regret digging that hole?" "Never." "Why?" "Because your life changed completely. Before you were just a quiet, married farmer without major worries. Now you have responsibilities with dozens of families. You're involved in educational projects. You've become a national reference." "Valerie, before I didn't know who I was. I was living a borrowed life, based on well-intentioned lies. Now I live my own life, based on my own history. Is it more complicated? It is, but it's more truthful." "And Meredith, how is she handling all these changes?" "Better than I expected. I think she feels more complete now too. Before we were just a couple of farmers. Now we're a family that's making a difference in other people's lives." When they got back to the farm, they found Meredith at the school, helping the children with a play about local history. "How was the trip?" she asked. "Very good. They want to create a network of rural schools based on our model." "And did you accept?" "We agreed to collaborate, but we made it clear we don't want to become a franchise. Each school needs to be born from the specific need of its community." "Speaking of which," said Meredith, "an interesting visitor arrived today." "Who?" "A journalist from a national magazine. She wants to write a story about our history, about how the horse led you to discover your origins." Walter became thoughtful. "I don't know if I want all that exposure." She said something interesting. She said there are thousands of people across the country who don't know their own family histories, that our story could inspire other people to search for their origins. "What do you all think?" "I think it could be good," said Valerie. "But we have to be careful not to romanticize the story too much. We don't want people to think it's easy to discover the past, or that there will always be a happy ending." "I agree. If we're going to do it, it has to be with total honesty. Talking about the pain of discovery, about how hard it is to deal with family lies, about how not everyone is prepared to know the truth about their origins. And about how some injustices can never be fully repaired," added Meredith. "Exactly. My mother died without knowing I was okay. My father died without knowing me. Those are wounds that will never heal completely. But that can be turned into something positive. Yes, into motivation to do good for other people." They decided to accept the interview, but with conditions. The journalist would have to spend a week on the farm, really getting to know the school project, talking with people from the community, understanding all the nuances of the story. The article was published 3 months later, with the title, "The Horse That Revealed a Family." It was a national success. Walter received hundreds of letters from people who had been inspired by the story to search for their own origins. One of the letters that moved him the most was from an 80-year-old lady from Pennsylvania. "Mr. Walter, I read your story in the magazine and cried from start to finish. I was also adopted as a baby, but I never had the courage to look for my real family. After reading about you, I decided to try. I discovered that my biological mother died 10 years ago, but she had left a letter for me at a notary's office. In the letter, she explained that she gave me up for adoption because she was very young and couldn't afford to raise me, but that she never stopped thinking about me. I also found out I have 2 siblings, and we've already met. Thank you for giving me the courage to learn my own story. Meredith, look at this letter. Look at..." She read it and was moved. "You see, our story is helping other people. Yeah, but it's also bringing responsibility. I feel like now we have to keep doing the right thing because a lot of people are watching. And is that bad? It's not bad, but it's a pressure I didn't have before. 5 years after the discovery of the buried box, Walter was on the house porch, watching the children play in the schoolyard. Thunder, now over 25 years old, grazed peacefully in the nearby field, much slower than before but still strong. Meredith approached with a cup of coffee. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about how our life has changed. 5 years ago, we were just a couple of farmers. Today, we're a national reference in rural education. We have a school with 60 students, and our story has inspired dozens of other people to search for their origins." "And are you happy with these changes?" "Very happy. But sometimes I also miss the simplicity of before." "The simplicity or the ignorance?" Walter laughed. "Good question. I think I miss the peace of not knowing there were injustices to fix, people to help, responsibilities to take on." "But you couldn't live like that anymore, could you?" "No. Now that I know who I really am, I couldn't pretend I don't know." Valerie approached, coming from the school. "Walter, Meredith, you need to see something." "What is it?" "One of the school's students, Jenny, who's 8 years old, wrote an essay about family. She wrote about how Thunder is the school's grandfather because he was the one who discovered the secrets that allowed the school to exist." "How sweet. And there's more. She suggested we make a statue of Thunder at the school entrance so future generations always remember the importance of seeking the truth." Walter was moved by the idea. "A statue of Thunder. I like the idea. What do you think?" "I think it's perfect," said Meredith. "He deserves to be remembered forever. And we could use the opportunity to create a memorial for all the other characters in our story," suggested Valerie. "Elizabeth, Michael, Patricia, even Miss Dorothy, who is still alive but is already a legend around here." "A truth memorial," said Walter. "I really like the idea." The Truth Memorial was inaugurated 1 year later. It was a small garden at the school entrance with plaques telling the story of each important person in the discovery of Walter's origins. In the center, a beautiful bronze statue of Thunder with a plaque that said, "In honor of all who keep secrets until the right time to reveal them." On the day of the memorial's inauguration, a surprise appeared. A very elderly lady leaning on a cane accompanied by a younger man. "Excuse me," said the man. "We're looking for Mr. Walter Thompson Wilson." "That's me. How can I help you?" "My name is Charles, and this is my grandmother, Miss Josephine. She says she knew your mother." Walter felt his heart race. Another piece of the past coming to him. "Miss Josephine, you knew Elizabeth Thompson Wilson." The elderly lady looked at Walter with eyes still bright, despite her advanced age. "Yes, I did, my son. And you're just like her. The same eyes, the same way you tilt your head when you're deep in thought. Did you work with her on the farm?" "I did. And I was the one who helped her on the day you were born." Walter had to lean on Meredith. Yet another person who had been present at the most important moment of his life, and whom he had never known. Were you a midwife?" "I was. In those days, many women in the area had their children at home, with the help of midwives. Your mother had you in a little house at the back of the farm with only me and Patricia to help." "And how was she? Was she happy when I was born?" Miss Josephine smiled. "My boy, I've seen many women give birth in my life, but I've never seen a mother look at a baby with as much love as your mother looked at you. She held you in her arms and cried tears of happiness. But then she left me with Patricia because she loved you too much to let you suffer the consequences of what the Thompson-Wilson family was doing to her. She knew you would be better off away from that situation." "Do you have any other memories of her?" "I do. She made me promise one thing before she left. She made me promise that if you ever returned to these lands, I would tell you how much she loved you." "And you kept that promise for over 50 years?" "I did, and when I read about your story in the magazine, I knew the time had come to fulfill the promise." Miss Josephine opened an old bag and took out a small object, wrapped in cloth. "She gave this to me to keep for you." Walter unwrapped the object carefully. It was a small wooden crucifix, simple but well crafted. "She said it was for you to always remember that you were loved. even when you didn't know where that love was coming from. Walter began to cry. For the first time in 5 years, they weren't tears of pain or confusion, but of pure gratitude. Miss Josephine, thank you. Thank you for keeping that promise, for taking care of my mother when I was born, for being here today. You don't have to thank me, my son. Your mother was a special woman, and you've become the man she always dreamed you would be. The conversation with Miss Josephine lasted the whole afternoon. She told details about Walter's birth, about Elizabeth's last days on the farm, about how Patricia had prepared to care for him. Your mother left you with Patricia, but she didn't leave immediately, revealed Miss Josephine. She hid in town for a few weeks, just to make sure you were being well cared for. Did she ever see me after I was born? She did. Patricia would take you for walks around town, and Elizabeth would watch from a distance. She wanted to be sure you were healthy, that you were developing well. And then? Then she left. She said she was going far away, where nobody knew her story. She wanted to start a new life. Do you know where she went? To the south. I think she went to Oregon, but we never heard from her again. Charles, Miss Josephine's grandson, had been quiet during the whole conversation, but now he spoke. Mr. Walter, my grandmother is 92 years old. She insisted on coming here even against the doctor's recommendations. She said this promise was the last important thing she had to do in her life. Walter was deeply moved. Miss Josephine, do you have a place to stay tonight? We would be very happy if you would stay for dinner with us. We were planning to go back today, but if you insist, we do insist. And tomorrow you must see the school. You need to see what my mother's love helped build here. That night during dinner, Miss Josephine told more stories about the time when Elizabeth lived on the farm, stories about how she cared for the animals, especially for Thunder when he was just a colt. Stories about how she dreamed of having a family, of being able to raise her son in peace. She always said that if she ever had the means, she would come back to get you, Miss Josephine recounted. But she also said that if she couldn't make it back, she hoped you would grow up happy, even without knowing your story. She managed to do both, said Walter. I grew up happy with Patricia, and now I know my story. And you're doing so much more than she ever dreamed. This school, this project, she would be so proud. The next morning, Walter accompanied Miss Josephine on a visit to the school. The children were delighted by the elderly lady who had helped at the birth of the school's founder. Children, Walter said, Miss Josephine is a very special person in our history. She was the one who helped my mother on the day I was born 55 years ago. A little girl raised her hand. Miss Josephine, what was Mr. Walter's mother like? She was a very courageous woman, very caring, and very much like all of you. How so? She believed that education was the most important thing in the world. She always said that if people knew more, if they studied more, there would be less injustice in the world. Is that why Mr. Walter built the school? Exactly. He is fulfilling his mother's dream. Another boy asked, and what about Thunder? Did he know Mr. Walter's mother? Yes, he did. He was her favorite horse. She took care of him every day, talked to him as if he were a person. Is that how he knew where the box was buried? That's right. Thunder kept the memories of Mr. Walter's mother safe all these years, waiting for the right moment to share them. After the school visit, at the time of their farewell, Miss Josephine held Walter's hands. My son, now I can leave in peace. I kept the promise I made to your mother, and I've seen that you've become a good man. Miss Josephine, thank you for everything. You gave me the most precious gift, the certainty that I was loved from the very first day of my life. And you are repaying that love by caring for so many other children. Your mother is smiling from wherever she is. End of story. Tell us what you thought of Walter's story and his amazing discovery. Do you believe destiny led Thunder to that special moment? Leave your opinion in the comments and share if you've ever experienced something similar. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.